Pass rusher Trey Hendrickson is finally free from the Cincinnati Bengals. So will we finally get that reunion with Lou Anarumo? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network around. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com. And I'm joined today by Destin Adams from A to Z Sports, your guys' favorite Colts guy out there, besides me and Jake, obviously. We love Destin here on Locked On Colts, even with his gyrating camera that you guys can see on on YouTube today. But Destin is here to talk all about free agency, and we are going to break away a little bit from the sobbing over the Alec Pierce decision, from talking about Daniel Jones with the transition tag, and just talk about other free agency aspects for this Colts team before Monday kicks off the biggest event of the NFL calendar. We're going to kick it off, obviously, by talking about Trey Hendrickson, because can we really go an offseason without talking Trey Hendrickson at this point? So we'll spend the whole first segment just talking about the pros and cons of that veteran pass rusher. Then we'll dive into some other free agent targets. And I know Jake and I have talked about a lot this offseason, but we're going to get Destin's viewpoint on a couple guys and also look at how maybe Bobby Okerke shakes up this linebacker free agent market. We'll talk about that. And then to close it out, there's been a pretty active trade market in the NFL this offseason, including DJ Moore getting traded today, Trent McDuffie getting traded a couple days ago as well. So could we see the Colts get in on that trade market, whether it's trading away players or trading for players? We'll close out the show with that. But Destin, kicking in this off with Trey Hendrickson, because he is the big money man here in Indianapolis. I don't think there's ever been a player who's made Indianapolis like Colts fans or content creators like more money the last 2 years than Trey Hendrickson. So we are talking about him for maybe the final time. And because obviously free agency starts Monday and we'll see where he ends up. But if he's finally free from the Cincinnati Bengals, the Colts don't have to give up any draft picks to go after him. So as long as they're able to move some money around, like we all expect them to be able to do by Monday, they can actively negotiate with Trey Hendrickson, a player they tried to trade for. We all assume they tried to trade for during last season.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Hendrickson's been linked to the Colts so much you'd think he was a Colt at one point. Just one of those great former Colts that we talk about all the time. Instead, he's just a almost Colt 20,000 times, it feels like, over the last year and a half. Yeah, he's officially going to be available. I think that makes it way more appealing for a team like the Colts that was struggling to feel out if Cincinnati was ever really interested in pulling off a trade, if it felt like they were just talking to themselves on those phone calls, like the rest of the NFL felt like when they were talking to Cincinnati about trading for a star player. So the fact that he's going to be available is appealing, and it makes sense. The Colts have such a clean slate in the edge rusher room that you feel like they have to at least negotiate there. Now, I think when it comes to Hendrickson, the big part here is going to be there's so many teams that need to upgrade their pass rush, and there's only one Max Crosby team out there. Only one person's going to pull off that trade, and if Max Crosby's off the board, it feels like Trey Hendrickson's going to be that next guy that's going to slide up on those teams' boards. Now, the Colts are not typically the team that's going to win a bidding war if it comes to free agency. So does Trey Hendrickson like Lou Anarumo enough and like Marlon enough that he wants to play for those guys enough to take a slight pay cut to be in a spot that he wants to be in? He just spent the last year in a place he didn't want to be in. So I feel like that may play in the Colts factor. But I also think the Colts have put themselves in a tough spot because they're not going to hit Monday with priority one being Trey Hendrickson. They're going to hit Monday, and priority one is most likely still going to be Alec Pierce.
Yeah, and Daniel Jones as well, after Daniel Jones sees what his market looks like. So that is a great point to include there. But I expect the Colts to at least make the call on Trey Hendrickson. It's just like you mentioned, it's going to be difficult to outbid like a team like Washington, right? Who has been all in with these veteran players the last couple years with their quarterback on the rookie contract. It just makes a lot of sense from Washington's perspective. Dallas, we know, is aggressively making some calls about edge rushers. Max Crosby obviously included, I think, in terms of what they're going for. Chicago, I think, could be involved in Trey Hendrickson. So it is going to be a very tough market, I think, for the Colts. And like you said, it comes down to how much he values Lou Anarumo, Marlon Hobby as well at the defensive line coach, or Marion Hobby at defensive line coach. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of factors at play here, but just looking at Hendrickson as a player and kind of looking at the pros and cons of going after him. Since 2020, he is third in the NFL in sacks among edge rushers, only behind Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. He has 74.5 in that 6-year span, so averaging well over 10 a season, and that's with him only playing 7 games last year. Obviously, again, that overlap with Anarumo in Cincinnati is big. That's where his biggest production came. 2 20-sack seasons in Cincinnati under Lou Anarumo, but that is kind of the past. It's a couple years ago. If we're looking at just what last year looked like, limited to just 7 games with that, what was it, a hip injury, Destin? Or I think it was a hip. Right?
It was a hip injury last year that kind of left him out of some games. Now, the talk in Indy during the combine was that most teams around the league feel as if he probably would have been able to play through it if he was in a situation where he was under a contract that he felt was helping him out in the longevity of his career. That obviously wasn't the case. So I do think the hip injury mattered last year, but from people around the league, they seem to think he was a guy that probably could have played through it if he was in a better situation.
Yeah, and then just adding to that, even if it wasn't as serious as what it seemed last year, you still got to be a little concerned about a 31-year-old player in the NFL having that limited amount of action in a season. So he's going to turn 32 during next season. In December of next season, he'll be turning 32 years old. Edge rushers have a little bit more longevity than the position like receiver or running back, but there still is that expected fall off coming soon. So if you give him like a 3-year contract, is he playing all 3 years on that contract? Probably not. I don't think he's getting to that 3rd season, maybe not even the 2nd season. So this might be like a 1-year mercenary type thing. And then one more factor I wanted to throw in here, Destin, before I throw it back to you, just to give your overall thoughts on this fit. He was a pretty awful run defender in Cincinnati throughout pretty much his entire time. So I do worry about a player who's getting older who just wasn't a very good run defender anyway, right? Throughout his whole time, giving him that kind of contract that might be close to like $30 million in a season, $28 million in a season, whatever it's going to be. I do worry about that kind of player because it might turn into like a designated pass rusher situation, and then he's not really impacting the game in every single way like a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt or some of these other guys who are making similar dollars. So I think there are some pros and cons here. Obviously, he gave the Colts an elite sack creator that they haven't had in a long time, but there are a lot of risk with his age, the injury last season, and already some of the deficiencies in the run game that he showed the last couple years.
I think a big part of it also is just going to be figuring out what they want in terms of, is this signing that's going to happen at edge rusher someone that they want the best year of that contract to be in 2026? Or is that somebody that they want to kind of grow into that contract in the 27, 28 range of when their best ball is going to be played in Indianapolis? And if the answer is you want the best ball to be 2026 and you're going to make a lot of different moves to try and fix this defense quickly, then I could see why Trey Hendrickson ends up being the number 1 guy on that board, because I think that would equal that. But if the answer is that you want to be good in 2026 and compete in 2026, but also look towards 27 and 28 and just continuing to ascend a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, then I do think it's a little bit harder to buy into the Trey Hendrickson for a large contract type of mindset. Now, well, I think we'll find out a lot of that in terms of how the Colts decide to create this cap space they're going to have to create. Because if the way they do that is releasing or trading players to where their cap doesn't just leave the books in 26, but also leaves the books later, then I think that would point a little bit more towards the need not needing to be this year alone. Now, if we see some extensions and some restructures and they push money down the road into 27 and 28, it's going to become pretty obvious that the Colts are really wanting to bank a lot on the 2026 season. So I think we're going to watch that and we'll see where that lands on which edge rusher would be their top preference.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Real quick, though, before we get out of this first segment, where do you fall on it personally? Just you, not even like what you've heard or anything like that. Where do you personally fall on signing Trey Hendrickson? Because I think for me, I'm leaning towards no. Like, I'm not going to throw a fit if they sign him because we're getting the best sack creator they've had since Robert Mathis. Like, it's not going to be that upsetting for me. But I do think I probably lean towards no, even though I want to be like this kind of all-in season next year. I'm scared of that age and the contract and some of the deficiencies on film.
Trey Hendrickson is the Colts' best bet at having an above average pass rush next season. I think when you're looking at the options on the market, I think there are other guys that could exceed expectations down the road. But in terms of giving you a unit that can affect the passer and just be in a much improved unit as a next season, like I think Trey Hendrickson's the best Band-Aid fit that's out there. So I guess I say I lean yes. The Colts have just put so much into next season. They traded for Sauce Gardner. They've transition tagged Daniel Jones. We don't know what's happening with Alec Pierce yet, but if he's back, like you're going to expect that they're going to have to overpay. So like, I just think there's so much being invested in the 26th season that your move at edge rusher has to have that year in mind primarily. And then you can make other moves to try and fill for the future as well. So I guess I lean yes, even though I think the thought of giving him $30 million is asinine, but free agency is an asinine place, Zach.
It is. It very much is. Coming up, though, we're going to continue this conversation about free agency, some of Destin's top targets on the open market, and also if Bobby Okerke hitting that market changes anything for the Colts and teams around the league.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Already Locked On Colts everydayers, we are back talking about free agency, talking about Trey Hendrickson for the millionth time on this show. Before we get into that, though, free agency is here, guys, and so are we. Get 1 month free of the Everydayer Club with code FREEAGENCY, no spaces, now through March 15th. Go ad-free and keep this conversation going on Discord. Join the club at lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join or even gift a subscription to that special someone. I know that's the perfect gift for a loved one out there. We are back talking free agency, though, with Destin Adams from A to Z Sports. And before we get into some of your targets, Destin, a lot of Colts fans are clamoring for the reunion between the Colts and Bobby Okerke. Now, the coaching staff that was here when Okerke was here last time is completely revamped, right? The defensive coaching staff has gone through multiple changes since then. I do find it interesting, though, that the Colts have a lot of Giants coaches or former Giants coaches on staff right now. So Jerome Henderson overlapped with Okerke with the Giants for a couple of years there. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Tony Sparano Jr. and the Colts running back coach as well were also in New York at the same time as Okerke. So there is a little bit of familiarity still with some of the players on the roster as well, but still drastically different situation. And for a Colts team that wants to get younger, wants to get faster, like Chris Ballard has said all offseason, does signing or going after a 29-year-old Bobby Okerke make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of it's going to depend on, ironically, one of his former teammates, Zaire Franklin, and what the Colts decide to do there. Because to me, I don't see a way that Chris Ballard, who is a linebacker drafter through and through, doesn't look at this class and is just licking his lips. I mean, there's just so many guys in this class that can work in the 2026 class, which is not a very deep class in a lot of positions. So to me, if you're going to go out and get a veteran in free agency, I still feel like you're going to want room to play some of these young guys. So like, I don't see a world where it makes sense to be this younger and faster that he's decided to patent himself for what the defensive side of the ball is going to be every time he speaks in a microphone this offseason. and then go out and your starting linebackers next year are Zaire Franklin, and you bring in about to be 30-year-old Bobby Okerke. I think Okerke is still playing good football though. Like I think he's coming off good football in New York. I think 2 years ago he was hurt. He was able to kind of come back this year and play at a high level still. I really do feel like he'd be an upgrade to what they had, obviously. And I think he's in a situation to where he could not come at a very high dollar amount. A lot of times when guys are released and you're going to get paid by their former teams, they're going to take a little bit of a pay cut in terms of that first year because they're already going to be being paid. And in this case, he'll be being paid by the Giants. So I think it makes sense if you're able to move off Zaire Franklin and then you bring in a veteran off the free agency market and then you target linebacker once or maybe twice in the upcoming class to really start to add that youth behind a veteran to kind of teach them a little bit. And there's a few different veterans that are on the free agency market at linebacker that would work for the Colts if that's the path they take.
Yeah, no. So I think Okereke makes some sense. I wouldn't go crazy either way about that kind of signing. I think he's played some good football, but again, he's getting a bit older. I think there was a bit of a step back the last 2 years compared to what it looked like early on with the Giants. So we'll see. I wouldn't hate the reunion though, but I do think, like you said, it kind of hinges on what they do with Zaire Franklin and his contract. But looking at other free agents, we talked Hendrickson, we talked Bobby Okereke. Who are some other guys on your short list that you have circled like, hey, these guys could make sense for the Colts as long as they're able to clear money and work the Daniel Jones and potential Alec Pierce contracts the way they want? Who are some other guys that you have kind of on your short list for the Colts?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're looking at the edge rusher position, earlier we talked about how, like, if they decide they want the best year of that edge rusher's career to be in 2026 on that contract, then Trey Hendrickson makes sense. I think if a guy you're willing to kind of let ascend on that contract, like I think Boya Mafa from Seattle is a guy that hasn't had it's not been all gas in Seattle. He's been able to be pulled out, been very rotational here and there, but has made a lot of flashes that I think are enough to be excited about in free agency, which to me has been a lot of Chris Ballard's best free agent signings. Like that mold of free agent is usually where he's been able to get his best bang for his buck. And I think Boya Mafa is not going to be a guy that is going to end up being a top 5 paid edge rusher in this free agency class, even though I think he should be. And ironically, I think someone that's going to jump into that top 5 is a Colts in-house guy in Kwity Paye. And I think Boya Mafa is probably going to get less than Kwitty's going to get on the open market. And I would rather have Boya Mafa if I was in charge of an NFL team. And I think he would be able to start day one opposite of Leatu Latu. And I think you'd be able to kind of see him ascend and during that contract. If it's a 3-year contract, like I truly believe he'd be better in 27 and 28 than he's going to be in 26. But I really do think he's a guy that would make a lot of sense for Indy if that's the process they decide to take.
Yeah, the Colts have always kind of been towing this line of being a retooling team with that also wants to contend, right? Like again, I always go back to 2022 when they brought back the whole roster, but with a rookie quarterback in there as a starter. So just kind of that like best of both worlds, or I guess worst of both worlds in a lot of ways as well. And I think a player like Boya Mafa just kind of makes a lot of sense from the sense of like, we want to be better next season. I think he's an upgrade over what Kwity Paye just gave them last year, but also it's not a guy where like, if you have to blow this thing up after the season, you're fine with keeping him under contract the next couple of years. He's a good young player, really great run defender. I think there are some really good moments in pass rush, and I think he is due for a bigger role. He's kind of like a Samson Ebukam plus type player for me, where it's like when the Colts went out and signed Ebukam a couple of years ago, he was an ascending young player who had his best year with the Colts in that first year of that contract. I think this is like a plus situation where I think he's a bit better than what Ebukam was coming into Indy. So I completely agree with that. Do you have a couple other players that you want to go through real quick here in this segment, though?
Yeah, I can go a little bit faster than I did on Mafa too.
No, you're good. I think that's one of their top. I think that's one of the top targets I would have. So I agree with going longer on that guy for sure.
I think another guy like AJ Epinesa from Buffalo would really fit kind of like what Lou usually looks at in terms of edge rushers, bigger body, able to use a little bit more power. I think he'd probably fit well with what Leatu does. I think you'd be expecting Leatu to take another step as a pass rusher if that Epinesa is the guy you go after, but I think it would make sense If you're willing to draft an edge rusher high and then bet a little bit on a free agent, I think Kingsley Engabare, I think is how you say his last name.
Yeah.
But I mean, I definitely could be wrong. But Kingsley, I'll say that, out of Green Bay, I think he flashed a lot this past year. And again, kind of like Maffa, but even more so, was really only rotational. And I really feel like as you saw the year go on, like he really started to flash more and more, even with his smaller snap count. I think he's, again, the type of free agent that Chris Ballard usually circles, seeing that he was really starting to flash in a small role elsewhere. Can he take that step with a bigger role? I also think he's not going to come at a high enough dollar amount to where the Colts could still draft an edge rusher on day 2, and you kind of would be able to have a little bit of a quote unquote competition come training camp in terms of who's going to start opposite of Latu. It's not going to be the signing that's going to excite fans right away, like, oh my gosh, we fixed the pass rush overnight. But I do think for the amount that I think he's going to end up getting on the free agency market, he's another guy that I think Kwity Paye's leaving the Colts, and he's going to get paid more than I would pay him. I think Kingsley's a guy that is going to come at a lower dollar amount, and I think he's going to outplay what Kwity does on his next contract.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I do love the shout, though, with Ipanesa as well from Buffalo, because that feels like such a Lou Anarumo type of player where he has the body type I'm looking for. He's had some flashes. I can get more out of him. I don't want to make the one-to-one comparison here because it's very different, but I remember what Trey Hendrickson was going into Cincinnati, right? A big-bodied, flashing pass rusher who wasn't fully put together, gets to Cincinnati and becomes this star. I could see Lou viewing it from a similar lens as that with Ipanesa from Buffalo. So I do like that as a sneaky signing for the Colts. And then again, real quick, I'm going to push you. Be quick with this one. Quick with this one, okay? I'm gonna put it on you. Non-pass rushers, who do you got?
I mean, earlier I talked about linebacker. Like, I think there's some young options in free agency, but to me, if you're going to go sign a linebacker, because of how much I like this draft class, I would want it to be an older guy. And I think looking at him, like, if you want to go older, Demario Davis is the definition of older, Zach. But I think Demario Davis, even at 37 years old, is going to play at a higher level than what the Colts had at linebacker last year. So if you're able to move on, I think Demario Davis is a guy that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, at least you didn't say Bobby Wagner, so I will take
Hey,
that.
You don't want a
sure.
second team All-Pro Bobby Wagner on your team next year, Zach?
Oh my gosh, the pity All-Pro that he gets every year in the twilight of his career. Coming up though, guys, that's not the only thing going forward with the Colts is free agency. There's also the trade market, a very active trade market around the league. Could we see the Colts get in on it, either from selling off some of their pieces for this high price that keeps going around the league, or buying somebody else and making this team much better? But first, this episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry at work, in relationships, in families, and in all the unseen roles that they step into every single day. It's easy to celebrate that strength, but it's just as important to make space for their emotional well-being. And honestly, that goes for all of us. Obviously, we all have women in our lives that mean a lot to us, from mothers to spouses to friends and family. They are the best things out there. We love our women here on this show, and they are just fantastic. So make sure you're looking out for them and your own mental health this month and every single month with something like BetterHelp. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. Fill out a short questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and if it's not the right fit, switch at any time. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/locked-on. That's betterhelp.com/locked-on. All right, Locked On Colts everydayers, we are back for a final time today to talk about the trade market. And I think a big part of why I want to have this conversation is we've had two major trades go down the last couple of days, Destin, from DJ Moore getting moved to the Buffalo Bills today, and Trent McDuffie getting moved to the Los Angeles Rams a couple of days ago. And it does appear to be a bit more active this year, and also in just recent years in general when it comes to trade markets. So I wonder if we could see the Colts get involved here. Chris Ballard has made some notable trades in the past, either trading for players or trading players away. And to kind of start, I do think we're going to see at least a little bit of movement with them trading away players, most notably Anthony Richardson at some point this offseason. And maybe after seeing the DJ Moore comp, Michael Pittman Jr. could make more sense as a trade. Like I've been thinking all offseason, like you get like a 5th rounder for him. But if the Bills were giving up a 2nd round pick for DJ Moore, maybe you could get like a 3rd or a 4th for Pittman. Like again, you don't do this if you don't get Alec Pierce back. So that's going to be the big part of it. But if they do ink Alec Pierce to an extension, I mean, in this receiver market, maybe it makes sense to trade Pittman for like a 4th, or maybe you get back a 3rd while giving a 5th or something like that. Maybe the Colts could do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Colts would be crazy to not at least raise their eyebrows a little bit when you see DJ Moore go for a 2nd, and I believe Chicago also gave a 5th. I don't know what the trade calculator brings that in at. Maybe a 3rd, maybe a little bit.
It probably plays it in as like a mid 3rd, because I think it was a late 2nd that the Bills are giving up. So a late 2nd for a 5th and a player, that's like that's basically like a mid 3rd value for DJ Moore, who the Bills are on the hook for like $40 million guaranteed the next 2 years. And he's like 30. He's like 29, 30 years old. That's crazy good value for the Bears to get that back.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if the Colts can get a top 100 pick, like even if you look at those comp picks that come in the 3rd round that these teams are going to get granted here in the next week or so, like to me, I'd pull the trigger. Like I think getting off the cap hit that would be there for Pittman, most of it, obviously, you're going to be on the hook for some of it. But getting a top 100 pick, no matter how the evaluation comes in there, I guess if it's a 2nd and you give up a pick to also do it with Pittman, like I would have did the DJ Moore trade exactly to anyone that wanted him if I were Indy. And I think seeing that happen has to make you raise your eyes a little bit. I think Anthony Richardson's obviously an interesting one that he's gonna get traded eventually this offseason. Where is it and how does it go play out? I mean, everyone's favorite spot for Anthony Richardson this offseason has been the Vikings. And now everyone seems pretty certain that Kyler Murray's heading to Minnesota. So if Minnesota is not the landing spot for Richardson, where is it that you trade him? Are you getting a pick for Richardson? Is it a player for player swap and you're getting somebody at a position you need that's a risky but high upside type of player that you can get somebody to buy on Richardson the same way? It's possible. I think cornerback Jalen Jones is another one that is young. He's a young option in the secondary. Doesn't seem to be a scheme fit for Lou. So maybe his best ball could be played elsewhere, and you can get a pick in a year that the Colts don't have a lot of picks right now. It could make sense. I think the last one would be if they're able to figure it out. I mean, do you trade Zaire Franklin if a linebacker needy team calls?
Yes. If someone wants to take him, yeah.
I think the most likely situation would be you cut him. But it feels like every day you see teams say, we're going to cut this guy, but we're going to give you 12 hours to offer trades for him. So if that's what the Colts do and they find a team out there that is needy for a linebacker right away, I know fans are not the biggest fan of Zaire Franklin at this point of his career, but like he still plays at a high level at times. Like I think he has parts of his game that can be very useful to certain defenses. So I could definitely see a world where the Colts make an announcement they're going to cut Zaire Franklin if no one calls, and they're able to flip him for a 6th round pick or something. So if that's the case, then like I would do it if you're going to cut him anyway.
Yeah, look, I would love that. I think, not to throw cold water on it, I'd be shocked if they got anything for Jones or Zaire Franklin on the trade market. I kind of view Franklin trading away as like similar to Jermaine Pratt being potentially traded last offseason, where you're going to hold him and hope that somebody makes a trade for him, but you'll probably just ultimately release him if that's the path they want to go. I do think they could get something for Pittman, and they'll certainly get something for Richardson, but we'll just see how that goes for the Colts. But, you know, there's two sides of trading, right? There's trading away players, and there's also trading for players. And I have a couple guys on here. One, absolutely not going to happen. The other two, I think, would be interesting to call about. The first one is the one we actually have to bring up, which is the Max Crosby potential. Like everyone's talking about Max Crosby. Short answer, the Colts don't have the picks to get Max Crosby. They gave all that ammo to get Sauce Gardner. So that, you know, they don't have the ammo to get Max Crosby. It would be awesome to get him, but that's just not in the cards for them. But I think two that makes sense to at least call about for the Colts: linebacker Tremaine Edmonds from the Chicago Bears, who's still I think he's only like 26 years old. He's been in the NFL for like a decade, it feels like at this point. He came in at such a young age that I think he's like 26, 27 years old, going on to his 3rd contract soon. And then Jonathan Grenard, the pass rusher from the Minnesota Vikings. I do think Grenard, with how nice his contract is the next couple years, might take a top 100 pick to get him. Like, I think you'd have to flip like a second or a third probably to get him, but he's been a very productive pass rusher in his career at both stops with Houston and with Minnesota. And again, a very feasible contract for the acquiring team. So while I don't think they have any chance of getting Max Crosby, I do think I would at least make a call about Edmonds and Grenard and just see if you can work something out. Again, you want to keep some picks if you're the Colts, but I think they would at least intrigue me, and they would make the Colts defense much, much better for 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jonathan Grenard would be a great fit. I mean, I think when you look at his body of work, I know this past season wasn't the pass rush year that he had in years past, but he fits what Lou likes on the defensive line. And I think when you're looking at guys that could be a Band-Aid fix for 2026, we mentioned Trey Hendrickson earlier. I think Jonathan Grenard would probably be in that category for me in terms of being a Band-Aid fix that can play right away and fit what Lou needs. I don't know if the Colts are in the place to get rid of a day 2 pick, and that's what the reported interest is. So could the Colts finagle a way to make a deal where they're not giving up a second or third for him? I mean, if you get into that realm of conversation, I think it's definitely worth discussing. If Kyler Murray wasn't going there, I would love to find out a way that you could send Anthony Richardson and a pick for Jonathan Grenard, and that be how you kind of maneuver around getting rid of a day 2 pick. But if Kyler Murray's going there, I just don't see Minnesota being the team trading for Anthony Richardson. So that'd be my dream trade in terms of how to optimize this Anthony Richardson trade if you can. I just don't think it's plausible at this point. I don't think I need to spend much time talking about Max Crosby, though, in terms of I can't imagine what Las Vegas's answer is when we call and say, so we can start with our 2028 first round pick. The Colts, and if the Colts trade their 2028 first round pick and don't have a first for the next 3 years, the NFL is gonna start trying to pull up the NBA's rules in terms of how many picks you can trade in a row. The Colts are gonna create rules in the NFL if they do that. So that's not going to happen. Tremaine Edmonds is interesting. I mean, the Bears are going to cut him if they can't find a trade. That's usually the best thing you can hear as a GM on the other side of the phone is, they're going to cut him, so that value can't be too high. Tremaine Edmonds is a guy that would be a high-level player in terms of what the Colts could add. Again, to me, I'm not trading for a linebacker to play day 1 if Zaire Franklin's on the roster. If Zaire Franklin's on the roster, I'm not making that trade. If Zaire Franklin's not on the roster, sending a day 3 pick for Edmonds, and then you also can go out and draft a couple guys in the upcoming class. The Colts are going to add 2 comp picks most likely in this next week or so. So they have some maneuvering they could do. I think Tremaine Edmonds would make a lot of sense if the Colts can figure that out.
Yeah, Colts are going into the draft as of right now with 5 day 3 picks. Will be more after they're able to trade Richardson and, again, potentially Michael Pittman Jr. So they'll have the day 3 ammo to maybe make a Tremaine Edmonds call. I would be intrigued by that one for sure. But that's all we have for today, guys. Thank you all for tuning in to Locked On Colts. We'll be back here yet again tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe to our show to get all the latest episodes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at the Destin Adams, all on socials. And if you never miss an episode, then remember, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Colts audio ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and much more. Head to lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join the club. And remember to use code FREEAGENCY or follow the link in our show notes right now. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.